Fermentation was a common form of preservation during the hunter-gatherer period. You could extend the life of a food, you could get alcohol out of it, or a medicinal value. They had no idea what was going on, but the natural microbes, when given specific conditions, changed things like pH and outgrew the decaying bacteria while excreting preserving waste. One being ethanol, which would break down into acetic acid or vinegar over time. However, never did we use fermentation more and with a bigger impact than when we got grains. Making large quantities of ethanol suddenly became easy. Add to that the yeasts grown in grains gave more glutinous grains a leavening property, and bread and beer were yin and yang, twins that evolved together from the same process. Pyramid builders were listed as getting rations of beer and bread with some greens, which makes some scholars think that megalith building kick-started the mass production of grains. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey and mound building in many areas required tons of work and multiple times coming together for religious reasons, as well as astronomical and astrological research. This required tons of food. How they coordinated this kind of peace, cooperation, and sheer logistics at the time remains a mystery, but beer and bread was most likely the fuel that drove it, and for the first time large fields of grain were grown and harvested on a mass scale, having us learn all sorts of agricultural innovations. Corn, or a type of grain cultivated from the cousin of ragweed in the Midwest, along with its beer counterparts, probably also fueled the great mound building and stone structures and pyramids in the New World. Once the structures were built, the societies that had cleared and sacrificed a large section of their land for farming may have found it less advantageous to go back to their old ways. More calories they could store for a longer period of time for less work was a major driver. But the process of clearing land, changing the very environment of your territory, may have to many seemed just too risky or too much work to bother with. As we progressed, we began mixing herbs of different kinds with the beers to extend life. Mugwort was used in beer in Britain for much of its existence, but it was the Trappist monks who perfected the flavor and lifespan of beer using hops that we know it today. There were other methods to store food, just not as long-term with as many calories, which we will talk about next.